with the Coalition for Strong Nebraska, our weekly webinar series. Today's series is entitled Bones and Bills, How a Bill Becomes a Law in Nebraska. A little fun on Halloween. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started with the debut of our animated video, How a Bill Becomes a Law in Nebraska. So if you would please mute your line by pressing *6 and then turn your computer speakers up so that you'll be able to hear the video. Okay, here we go.
There was once a young Nebraskan named Linda. Linda saw a problem in her community and thought her idea could help solve it.
That's right.
I'd love to help people, but I'm just an idea. What can I do?
Linda and Idea knew they would need some help, so they headed to their local nonprofit. What an excellent idea!
Gee, thanks.
Idea, you could help a lot of Nebraskans, and the best way to do that will be through public policy, where an idea can become a law that improves the lives of everyone. I've called our state senator, and she thinks you're a great idea, too. In fact, she wants to start by introducing you to other senators in January.
Wow!
How exciting!
I'm a little nervous, though. What does all that mean?
Well, we will head down to Lincoln and meet our state senator in person. There you'll have to change a bit as we get you written down.
Being a bill suits you well. Let's get you introduced.
Nebraska is unique. Instead of having two houses of government, it has one house. It's the only unicameral in the U.S.
I introduced our bill to the Unicameral as a legislative bill called LB 111, and he was referenced to a committee.
What happens to me in a committee?
Committee hearings are designed to give the public a voice in the process. Every bill gets a public hearing where people have a chance to review it and give input as the first house.
During the hearing, a small group of senators discuss and ask questions about you.
Don't worry, we'll be there to support you and tell the committee why you're good for Nebraska. Bill was such a good idea, he was voted out of committee and sent to general file.
Whew! It was stressful having to answer all those questions.
Hang in there, Bill. We've got a ways to go.
During the general file, senators from all across Nebraska debate the pros and cons of our bill.
Trusted relationships between senators, nonprofit supporters, and lobbyists are essential during the general file. In these conversations, we can share data and stories about the impact our bill will have on the lives of Nebraskans.
And during this round of debate, it's important for us to encourage individuals to become advocates of our bill. We can ask everyone we know to call, email, visit, or write personal letters to their senator.
Hey, this isn't what I looked like when I got here.
Well, Bill, you might have worked really well as an idea in your hometown, but now, if you're going to become a law, we need to make sure you can work well across the whole state.
Bill, these changes are called amendments. Senators, staff, nonprofit partners, advocates, and lobbyists use amendments to add thoughts on how to make you even better. All of this work is getting you ready for the second round of debate called Select File.
Select File is the next crucial round of debate. More amendments can be offered as senators work to make you the best possible bill.
With a nonpartisan legislature, all of the 49 senators are supposed to work together to do what's right for Nebraskans. It's another way our state is unique.
After the Select File, all the little details were worked out and Bill was voted through to the final reading. For Bill's final reading, the entire unicameral got to hear him read in his finished state and decide whether or not they wanted to pass him.
They voted for me. I'm a law now.
Not quite yet, Bill. You still have to go see the governor. He could sign you into law or decide to veto you and send you back to the floor for another vote.
Congratulations, Linda.
We did it, Bill! We did it!
I'm a law! I'm a law!
Great job, team. Way to go.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the animated feature, How a Bill Becomes a Law. We are so glad to be able to provide that resource for all of you. It is on the strongnebraska.org website. So if you want to download it, you can share it on Twitter or Facebook. You can embed it in your own website, share it with your friends and colleagues. We just want to provide that for our nonprofit partners and the entire community so that they can be more engaged in the legislative process. Now, that was just a quick overview of how a bill becomes a law. We are so grateful to have our CSN partner, Sarah Ann Kotchian from the Holland Children's Movement, who will dive a little bit deeper and tell us some more specifics about how a bill becomes a law and how to advocate. So, Sarah Ann, go ahead. And if you could unmute yourself, Sarah Ann, by pressing #6.
You'd probably learn a lot more if you could hear me, huh?
We got this.
Thanks, Jill. So, and thanks to everyone for joining us today, all these great friends on the call. I know this isn't the most exciting training, but I am really glad you all joined because it's a very important training to know essentially how a bill becomes a law or the rules of the game, because it's hard to be engaged if you don't know how to play along. So thank you all for being here. Happy Halloween. Don't be scared. We'll walk through this. It's going to be a lot of information, and it's going to come at you fast. So I just want you to interrupt me as we go. Please feel free to ask questions as we move through this quickly. And thanks again to the Coalition for a Strong Nebraska and Cammie and Marge and Joe for making this happen today. It's really a treat to be able to be a part of this day when we're sharing the video. I love that video. It fulfills some personal dreams of mine to have something like Schoolhouse Rocks and how a law becomes a bill at the Unicameral. So we still need a song. We still need a catchy song, but the video is brilliant. It's a great another tool in the toolbox. So I'm gonna move through this. So some of this is going to take you back, you native Nebraskans, to your 4th grade when you went to see the Capitol and learned about our unicameral. But I'm going to refresh your memories. We are the only unicameral in the country. We're the only nonpartisan legislature as well, which means that when our elected officials run for office, they run on a nonpartisan ticket. So you don't necessarily know if they're a Republican or Democrat or independent. And this works well on the floor. Each of our 49 senators truly represents between 30 to 35,000 people in their districts, and they listen to their constituents. Our senators do have term limits in Nebraska. This went into effect in 2006. So they're relatively new, and we're making our way forward as we figure out how to navigate how term limits have reshaped our legislature, because there's a lot of historical information and knowledge that's coming and going as new people take office, and they're learning the rules, they're learning how a bill becomes a law, not to mention becoming quick experts on all the issues that are important to us, from children to the environment to immigration to so many different things they have to learn very quickly. So after they serve their 2 terms, they are allowed to sit out 1 term and run again if they want to come back. So they can serve 8 consecutive years. That's 2 different terms. The legislative process. So the legislature operates in a 2-year cycle called a biennium. In each biennium, the legislature reorganizes and they elect a speaker who sets the agenda or what the schedule is going to look like for the day, and committee chairs who are in charge of the hearings, the public hearings that we'll talk about in a little bit that run in the video. And so at the beginning of the session, senators are assigned to committees, and they also pass rules for how they want to operate throughout the session, which are very important. Again, if you don't know the rules, it's hard to get the work done. So the legislative session, the biennium, there's 2 different sessions. The first session lasts 90 days, and it takes place during odd-numbered years. And we often refer to this as the long session. And then the second session is 60 days, and it's during even-numbered years, and we usually refer to this as the short session. This year, we're coming up on the short session. It goes very fast, but they get a lot of work done in a short session. The long sessions are really important because those are the budget sessions, and that's when the legislature sets the budget for the coming biennium. But that's not to say that they don't have to deal with budget issues in the short session as well. That's an ongoing process. But the majority of the budget work is done in the long sessions. Bill introduction. So session always begins the first Wednesday after the first Monday in January. And so this year, it's actually going to come up pretty quick. The session will begin Wednesday, January 3rd. Bill introduction always takes place during the first 10 days in each session. So after the first 10 days, we pretty much have a good sense of all the bills that have been introduced, what the conversations will be going forward, what issues will rise to the top or that you may want to take action on. As bills are introduced, they're assigned numbers in order of introduction. So when you hear us refer to LB1 or LB2, that means LB2 was introduced second. It can go up all the way to, say, LB 794, which is the 794th bill to be introduced. After bills are introduced, they are referred to committees. And I have on here Committee of Relevance. We have 14 standing committees and special and select committees. But for example, if a bill is introduced related to education or funding formula or public schools, it's going to be referred to the Education Committee because that's their issue, their specialty. Revenue Committee will deal with the tax bills. Appropriations Committee will deal with spending bills. Health and Human Services Committee will deal with Health and Human Services bills, anything dealing with Medicaid, child care, those types of issues. So that's how bills are organized and separated. I should back up one moment because when it comes to bills, and I think the video did a really nice job about bringing an idea forward. If you have an idea for a bill to be introduced, you don't have to know how to write the bill. You don't have to be an expert in the law. You can take your idea to a senator. There are brilliant people in the Capitol who are called bill drafters, and they take the idea from the senator and you, and they draft the bill, and they find where we fit it into the law, and they're the ones that can magically turn an idea into actual bill language. So don't be scared off by not knowing how to draft a bill. The committee hearing process. So after bills are introduced and referred to their committees, every bill gets a public hearing. And this is one of the gifts of the Unicameral as well, because in every state, not every bill gets a public hearing, but we do here. And that means we have a chance to bring public attention to the issues that are important to us. Any member of the public is allowed to provide testimony at these hearings. It can be either verbal, if you want to go up and state your case on record, or it can be written and read into the record. If you can't attend the public hearing, you can also email your letters in. So after the public hearing, the committee then has the opportunity to vote to advance the bill to floor debate or move to what we call indefinitely postpone the bill, which essentially means they've killed the bill. Something else the committee can do is they can advance the bill with amendments. If you have the hearing and issues arise that the committee wants to address before they advance the bill, an amendment can be drafted, and that can move along. We call them committee amendments. That can move along with the bill to help improve or change some issues that may have arisen during the hearing. For a bill to advance out of committee, a majority vote of the committee is required to take action on a bill. If no action is taken, the bill will be held by the committee. This means the senator needs to say, I want to take a vote on this bill, whether or not we're going to advance it or not. These are a couple of pictures of the committee hearing process. In case you've never been to a hearing, the picture on the left is the view from the audience in a public hearing room. You can see the testifier in the chair, and you can see the senator sitting kind of in a semicircle and they really listen to the testifier up in the chair. You can see they're all mic'd. The image on the right is the image from where a senator is sitting. So a senator listens one at a time to each testifier as they come forward. Again, these are public hearings. Anyone can come and go from these hearings as they're taking place, so long as they're respecting the rules of the committee, staying quiet, and following the order. Basic manners, essentially. So after a committee hearing, there are 3 stages of what we call floor debate. So say that a bill advances from the committee. There are general file, select file, and final reading, and this was highlighted in the video. I'm going to take you a little deeper. General file and select file are the times where the bills can be amended. This is where there can be some back and forth. There's great debate on the floor. This is where the bill really comes to life in a public sphere because it's left the committee and now it's being debated by the full legislature. And all of the general public needs to have input or pay attention to what's happening in general and select file and final reading. But this is where a bill really can come to life. For a bill to advance from one stage to the next, it needs 25 votes. If you remember, we have 49 state senators, so 25 is the magic number when we need a majority for the bill to advance. Now, to take you a little deeper into the rules, opponents of a bill can prevent the advancement of a bill by engaging in a filibuster. And this is extended debate. It can be about the issue at hand. It can be senators talking to one another, teaching one another about the rules, discussing the issues. This can go on for several hours because they're trying to run out the clock. So a motion to cut off this debate, this filibuster, is called cloture, and it requires 33 votes. And what it does is it allows a minority of senators to effectively kill bills that would otherwise pass. Here is a lobby and a picture of the floor. So on the left, this is the area that we call the lobby. During the session, this is just filled with people, filled with lobbyists, filled with tours of school children coming through. This is area is usually really buzzing with senators and advocates. On the right is a picture of someone. You can actually go up in these areas. It's open to the public, and you can watch floor debate from inside right above the floor. I would encourage all of you, if you've never seen floor debate in action, to take some time someday, if ever possible, to go watch some floor debate. I should mention, too, you can also stream floor debate live. You can stream all the committee hearings and the floor debate live from the Nebraska Legislature website. If you can't be there in person, you can tune into any TV. There's a link on the very front page of the legislature's website. Vetoes, overrides, and new laws. So for a bill to pass on final reading, it requires 25 votes, unless the bill contains what we call an emergency clause or an E clause, and then it requires 33 votes. And what the E clause does, it just means that the bill is going to turn into law a little bit sooner than normal, depending on the necessity of having that law on the books in a shorter amount of time. After the legislature passes the bill, the governor has 5 days, not including Sundays, to sign and approve the bill. The governor can veto the bill, which is disapproval. Otherwise, the bill becomes law just with the passing of time, which is just kind of a passive way of letting the bill become law without an overt signature or a veto. If the governor does choose to veto the bill, it goes back to the legislature, who can then vote to override the governor's veto. And this requires 30 votes, so more than the 25. There is, there's a question. Will the copies of the PowerPoint be emailed? Yes, absolutely, and I've included a lot of information so that you'll have references for what I'm going through now, and I'll also be happy to answer questions after today anytime. Priority bills. I added this because I wanted to talk to you about a very special class of bills if you're working on bills. Priority bills are exactly that, a priority. They're scheduled for debate before all other bills. And there's a time during the session when senators have to designate their priority bills. And as advocates, we're all eager to have senators create the bill that, our issue of importance, we want it to become their priority bill. Because typically, after the priority bills are designated, only priority bills will be scheduled for debate. So each senator gets to choose one personal priority bill. Each committee can designate 2 committee priority bills. And then the speaker can designate up to 25 bills as speaker priority bills. And the reason for priority bills, as we talked about, every bill gets a public hearing, and there can be hundreds of bills introduced in a session, and this is really a way to streamline the process so that the bills that are of importance to constituents, to senators, to committees, they can rise to the top and have time on the schedule during the session. This is particularly of importance during a short session when there's not a lot of time on the clock. And just because a bill is designated a priority bill doesn't mean it will get time on the floor. The speaker gets to decide what the schedule is for the day or the agenda. Issues that are priority, getting time on the agenda, it can also come down to, do you have a vote count ready for the speaker? Do you have enough support that this bill is going to move through, or is this going to hold up the clock? Is there a lot of controversy around this bill? And is there a lot of public attention around this bill? Are you drumming up a lot of attention to this bill where the public is calling for debate on this bill, and so you want to see it on the schedule, on the agenda, and hitting the floor for debate? Priority bills. So maybe some of you were on Danielle's brilliant tour of the legislative website last week. This is the link to it, Nebraska legislature.gov. It's a beautiful website that's updated every day. There's so much rich information on this website. I would highly advise, if you weren't able to join her webinar last week, to go back and watch it. She shows you some really great features in the website related to bills and searching for bills. There's also a great feature on the website called Nebraska Bill Tracker. And what this is a service where if there are certain bills that are of interest to you, you can sign up for this, plug in the bills that like a certain number of bills that you want to follow, and then you'll get emails anytime legislative action is taken on these specific bills. I highly advise using this if you're going to be advocating on bills. And if you've never seen an actual bill, or you get it and you print it and you're like, what is all of this? Because it's a lot of language. A couple of tips. The proposed new language, what they want to introduce as new, is always underlined. And any language that they want to be removed always has a strike through, so it has a line right through it. It's just a couple easy tips. If you print something out and you're like, what is this language I'm looking at? New language is always underlined. Let's see. Oh, that is a trick. Okay, so I guess this is my unintentional Halloween trick. So when we send these out, I will send this to you right side up. But this is really an upside-down dream scenario, just another refresher in how a bill becomes a law. So if you stand on your heads, it's kind of I guess it's not. It's inverted. You need a mirror. So down at the bottom, it's kind of, just think of it as like a hierarchy of need in a dream scenario. So first you have your bill drafted, then bills are introduced during the first 10 days, then there's a public hearing that goes wonderfully. Your bill advances to general file for full debate by the legislature. It cruises through general file right onto select file, where it doesn't need any amendments, and then it goes to enrollment and review, which is where they make sure that the language is correct, the grammar is right, the spelling is checked, and then it goes on to final reading, and it just sails right on to the governor, who signs the bill. This is just a quick cheat sheet of how a bill becomes a law. Backwards, upside down. Okay, so let's say you didn't have the dream scenario and your bill didn't advance. Now what are you going to do? Was your bill carried over? Is it still alive? Did you have a hearing? It just didn't go anywhere. Is it still sitting in committee? Do you need to go talk to committee members, figure out why it didn't advance? Is it on general file or select? What do you need to do to keep it moving? Do you need an interim study? So we talked about legislative bills, or LBs, but there's also something that can be introduced called the legislative resolution, or an LR. And these can be studies related to issues that can help bills move along through the process because you've dug in a little deeper to answer questions about your idea. Was your bill killed or indefinitely postponed? Do you want to reintroduce it? Do you want to reintroduce it with changes? These are things up for consideration. But whatever you do, don't give up on your great idea. Policy change is largely incremental, and so you just need to be patient and listen and to others, work to collaborate as much as you can, and keep going forward with your great ideas. This is a slide that I just wanted to have in here for reference, because there's a page on the legislative website that has session information related directly to bills, and I'm going to point out 3 of these. The first is the agenda, and this comes out usually at the end of the day. The speaker sets the agenda, and this always lets us know what's the daily plan for legislative business. It doesn't mean they're going to get through everything on the agenda, but we do know what's coming next from the agenda. Committee hearings. These are schedules that come out several days in advance, so you have time to prepare for public hearings. They're posted on the website. Highly recommend printing. These are updated pretty regularly, but you do get a few days advance notice of committee hearings. And finally, transcripts. I will go ahead and tell you that I'm a transcript junkie. This is word for word what happens in committee hearings and floor debates. So you can search for transcripts through your bills and see who showed up to testify. What did they say? What did the opposition say? What were the questions asked by senators? What was the floor debate on that? Because it can provide a window into answering the questions or thinking more deeply about the issues and how your policy, your law may move going forward, or things you may want to consider when you're thinking about implementation of the law, and so many other things. So transcripts are the other. So with that, thank you all. I am happy to take any questions now through email, anytime afterwards. We're very fortunate here at the Holland Children's Movement that and Coalition for Strong Nebraska, this is what we get to do with our time, is to help build advocates, help nonprofits lobby, and push our issues forward to make this a better community for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah Ann, for a wonderful deep dive into how a bill becomes a law and a lot more of the specifics that we obviously can't cover in a 4-minute video. So if you have any questions for Sarah Ann, you can see the chat function at the bottom right hand of your screen. You can go ahead and type a question in, or at the top of your screen there is a menu, and it looks like a little person raising her hand, so you can click that and we can unmute your line and you can ask a verbal question if you have one. So we will pause and see if you have any questions. We will provide the slides to all of you after the webinar. So Sarah Ann will give us an inverted pyramid and we will send those slides out to you. Please note that we are recording the webinar, so we will put a recording of the webinar up on the Strong Nebraska YouTube page as well, so you'll be able to watch it again and get all of the great information as well as follow along with the slides if you're interested. We should mention from the video that there is another option after a bill is voted out of final reading, right? The governor could sign it, the governor could veto, the governor could also let it sit for 5 days, right? And then it could go into law. So that is a third option. Okay, any questions? I see one person is typing. Okay. Here is a written question. What happens to all the other bills that never get priority status or are not heard in a hearing?
That's a great question. So all bills are heard, all bills receive public hearings. So if a bill gets introduced, you will have an opportunity for a hearing, to show up for a hearing in support or opposition of a bill that's been introduced. If it doesn't get priority status, that doesn't mean it won't ever get time on the floor. There are several options still to consider, and the one that stands out the most is turning that bill into and amending it onto a priority bill that would be considered germane or of the same issue area. So say I have a bill introduced related to pre-K that's not a priority, but there's another bill related to education or early childhood education or pre-K. I could take the bill that didn't get priority status and talk to the senators to see about their interest in amending the bill that didn't get a priority status onto the bill that did receive a priority status. And there's a lot to consider there, but that's another avenue for getting a bill passed that didn't get a priority status. I'm going to give you one more term on this holiday. So later in the process in general file and select file, when all of these amendments can be taking place, this is when bills that didn't get a priority status can be introduced for, if they're on general files, they advanced out of committee, but they're not getting time on the agenda. They can be amended into other bills, and we call this a Christmas tree, right? Because you have the tree, the priority bill, and you're decorating the Christmas tree with other bills. So you can Christmas tree a bill with bills that didn't receive a priority status. And that's when you really need to be paying attention to your bill tracker email updates, if anything happened with your bill, or the legislative website.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah Ann. What a great way to introduce another holiday into our Halloween-themed webinar today. So if you have any follow-up questions for Sarah Ann, you can always email her at the Holland Children's Movement. Again, we will be sending out the slides for you for next week. And then we want to show you quickly, we will continue our webinar series next week. November 7th is federal and state laws regarding nonprofit lobbying, and our executive director, Marge Plum, will be leading that discussion next week. And then we have social media advocacy, testifying in committee, and then finally letters to the editor and op-eds. So thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Halloween to everyone, and we'll see you again next week.